So Grant, what would you say is the role of sales now, and how should it best integrate with the marketing operation? Talk to us about that.
Interesting question, that one. So I think to answer that, just make sure that people understand the difference between sales and marketing anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So marketing essentially is brand communication. Yeah. So anything that comes from the company. So a website traditionally is a marketing channel, right? Yeah. Because it's coming from the company, right? Magazine advertising, all of that kind of stuff. That's brand. So it's all company communication. That's marketing. Yeah. Sales is human communication. Right. So it's when it becomes one-on-one or few to a few, but when it becomes human interaction, that's when you're into sales. And in actual fact, sales is a marketing channel. Yes. Because if you think about marketing communications and you've got a plethora of channels, you've got TV and radio and magazines and cinema and exhibitions and the list goes on and on and on. One of the channels you can use is a human to deliver the message. Absolutely. And that's not called sales traditionally. It's called personal selling. Yes. We in business call it sales, but in the academic world, they call it personal selling. Right. And the reason why is because in the B2B world, people often think of marketing as a lead generation tool. Yes. And sales as a lead conversion tool. Yes. And that is true. That's how a lot of businesses use it, but that's not the difference. And in the consumer world, marketing has to sell something. Absolutely. Yes. So, I always say to people, you've never gone down an aisle at Tesco's and been closed by an Andrex salesman for 4 toilet rolls, right? And yet they've spent millions of pounds having fluffy Labradors running around people's TV screens selling their toilet rolls. So if that doesn't translate in people actually making purchases, then clearly it doesn't work. So marketing sells stuff. And actually, Amazon is a marketing machine. Yes. It's not a sales machine. It makes lots of transactions. Yes. Lots of purchases are bought on it, but it's not sales because it's not human interaction. It's all brand. It's Amazon, the brand, and the other brands that you interact with on that platform. Yes. In terms of sales' role today in business, I would say that the big change is that sales is getting involved later in the journey. So in the B2B world, traditionally, right, in the B2C world, it was different. Yeah. But in the B2B world, traditionally, most businesses had very bad marketing departments, if one at all. Yeah. Because essentially they were sales engines. Yes. They had business development people, salespeople, getting out there, reps on the road, knocking on doors, making things happen, making calls. And, often marketing was one poor person in marketing who was charged with looking after the business cards and making sure the leaflets were done for the exhibition stand. Yes. And then people would sort of say, well, marketing doesn't work very well. And the retort would always be, we don't really have any marketing. Yeah. And really, you would never have employed them. They'd never have applied for the job. Yeah. But really, they shouldn't even be called marketing. They should have been called sales support. Because that's basically what they were. Yeah. Where that's changed today is that depending on which statistic you follow, but it could be 50, 60, 70, 80, even going up to 90, depending on the statistics. But the reality is that most of the buying journey, or a vast majority of the buying journey, is now done before a salesperson gets involved. So today, it's not what anybody does. No. Today, if someone's looking for an IP lawyer, the first thing they do is probably go online, Google it, go on social media, look around. Yeah. And then what would happen is depending on how effective that media was and the strong recommendations they got and other things, you might narrow that down to 3 or 4 or 5 people or companies, and then you make some inquiries. Yeah. And it's only at that point that sales has got involved. Yes. And at that point, they may have already decided what they don't like, what they do like, their criteria, what they're prepared to pay based on the prices that they've seen and been quoted on the sites, etc. Yeah. So a lot of what traditional sales would have done has been done. Yes. So I'd say that sales is getting involved much later in the process now, which means that businesses generally have got to become marketing-led operations with a sales function instead of sales-led operations with a marketing function, which what they traditionally were. Otherwise, they're going to fail. Yes. The salespeople that can cultivate relationships, deepen share of accounts, set upsell and cross-sell and value add, they're more important today. Yes. And I would say that today, you need less salespeople because they're not doing all the hunting stuff. Marketing's got to do that. So in other words, budgets that were going on those salespeople probably should go into marketing.
Yeah.
But the salespeople you do have today need to be brilliant.
Yes.
And they need to be almost experts and consultants in their field, which you could argue they should have always been.
They should have been. Yeah.
But they weren't. You know, a good salesperson is worth their weight in gold, but you need those really good ones, those ones that can go in, not just be consultative, but actually be experts, answer questions, really understand how the offering relates to business, whatever it is that offering is, and really add value. In other words, a salesperson that just goes into a meeting and does a product or service dump, which I could have got off your website.
Exactly, the walking brochures, I call them.
But there's no value in that, and most clients will just glaze over and just think they've been wasted their time. A salesperson that can come in, ask amazing questions, make a customer think, add some real value. Those salespeople are worth their weight in gold. And so I think sales has become much more sophisticated. You know, this idea of the salesperson with the gift of the gab that can sell anything to anyone, I'm not sure it was always a bit of a cliche.
I think it always was.
But I think today it's completely
interesting,
you know, away from the point, because I think today really good salespeople are actually really business savvy, really articulate, really intelligent, very understand business, understand where their offering fits into business, and can add tremendous value. And of course, the challenge with that is there aren't so many of those people around. Absolutely. So getting good salespeople is hard.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, as you say, if the buying decision is taking place online mostly, or a big part of that journey has taken place online, where they're needed is where, as you say, you've narrowed down, you're in the buying set now, you're in that customer's buying set, there's 3 of you competing for it, and each of you, the customer's researcher, said, well, you could all do the job based on my research. So the thing that's going to get it over the line now is the quality of that interaction between that salesperson in that moment, isn't it?
Ultimately, all salespeople do, and that's why it sounds like all salespeople do, but it's a hard thing to do, especially against a competitor. But all salespeople do is de-risk a purchase.
Yes.
What sales does for human interaction, what brand does at company level. What brand does is it de-risks a purchase in the mind of a customer. And that's why you can always demand a bit more with a brand, because someone might be looking at a laptop that seems to be all singing and all dancing, and then they're looking at a MacBook as an example, which is a few £100 more. And ultimately they go, you know what? This one looks amazing, but I'm not 100% sure if it's going to work because I don't know who it is. At least if I go with the Apple, I know it's going to deliver and it's going to be a slave and it's going to work for the next 5 years. And so they'll pay £300 or £400 more, sometimes more than that, but let's just say. And they're paying for brand because what brand does is it de-risks the purchase. What a salesperson does is, and it's interesting because a salesperson doesn't de-risk the actual purchase. The salesperson de-risks the perception of risk. Right? Because actually, I can have an amazing meeting with a salesperson. Doesn't actually mean the product's good, but it gives me a feeling that it is. So it's a good salesperson makes me feel, ultimately I'm going to go with them because I really feel that they can do the job. And of course, that might be the questions you ask. That might be the advice you give. It might be some insight that you drop. They go, I hadn't thought of that. That's really interesting. But ultimately, you de-risk the purchase by adding value in the meeting.
Really interesting.